I was thinking to go to my Moscow Minute. Someone said this recently, and I can't remember who said it, unfortunately, but the whole idea is the Cold War was a fight between freedom and socialism, or whatever, right? That's the way people see it. But what it really was a system of what we consider freedom, our highest ideal, is freedom, the free world, versus socialism, which is really based on the idea of justice. So the idea was that everyone has basic rights. They have a right to food and shelter and these basic, medical care, and that was kind of the socialist model. And freedom, and part of it's cultural. In Russian culture, personal freedom was considered less important than the collective, just for cultural reasons. But that's part of what socialism is. So really, it was a kind of a battle between freedom and justice. And I think that's a false dichotomy, because you can't have one without the other. And we've always had freedom, but freedom has become more and more for the elites. If the elites can have freedom, they can have their gated communities, they can have their freedom to do things. But if you're not in that select group, you really don't have freedom. And if you call for these basic rights, then you're considered a communist or a socialist or whatever. Whereas in Russia, you have people calling for freedom there, and they're pushing. There's a lot more political freedom now in Russia than there used to be, but still they're struggling to develop their freedom. But the point is that you can't have one without the other. And I think we're starting to look at that we don't have justice. We have freedom for certain people, but it's less and less of the population that has freedom, and we don't have justice. And people are seeing this, the police tear gassing and beating peaceful protesters, rich white protesters, and they're saying, okay, something's wrong here, so we need justice reform. Because the police, funding the police as they are, is unjust. So that's my Moscow Minute: the justice versus freedom dichotomy. And they're both part of the same thing, I think.
And freedom is definitely a factor of the economics in our country. Basically, that people are being suppressed as we started discussing this segment. Basically, that there's huge economic disparity that really keeps the thumb on a lot of people.
And it's based on this myth, the American dream, that if you work hard and you save money, you can get ahead, because you see that so much from wealthy people. Well, if you just get educated and you do this and you do that, and you don't go from the straight narrow path of success. But of course, if you do that, then it's your own fault. But it doesn't matter that you're born with two strikes against you. That doesn't matter. You just have to work hard. You can get it. That's a myth, and people are waking up to the fact that that's just a bunch of bullshit.
Right. Yeah.
What I'd be interested to know is, what is the definition of freedom?
I think freedom,
in the context that you were saying, what is the definition of freedom?
Okay, freedom is focused. Well, one thing I'd say about it is focused on the individual, whereas justice is focused on the collective. So the individual, the idea is that you are an automaton, and you try to do the best for yourself. And capitalism is based on this. You do well for yourself. You're gonna do and somehow the invisible hand. If everyone tries to do what's good for themselves, somehow the invisible hand will share the wealth. Well, it's not working, right?
Right.
So freedom really means. It's this. I think freedom means being able to have unity. Ideally, we'd have unity, but not uniformity. So the idea is that we can all be, just like in the human body, you have different organs, you have different cells. They work together. And if you have one cell that works too much on its own, that's cancer. So the idea is that an individual like Jeff Bezos is a cancer in our society, because it's just too much in one individual. That's the extreme. So we've become so extreme in this ideology of personal freedom, and that whatever you make, whatever power and wealth you get, and whatever corrupting influence you can exercise because of your power, well, that's because you worked hard and you earned it. Well, people are realizing that's bullshit.
But the argument is always that well, at least now, that if the more free, like, one person's freedom is the infringement of freedom on another person.
Right. Because our whole Western mindset is individuals. That we're all atoms, or atomistic, and we don't really have connections with other people. And so, Derek Chauvin is seeing that guy he has, George Floyd, as the other, right? And you talked about that. And as a culture, I think we're starting to realize that we have to start shifting more to a more empathetic attitude, that it's not just about screw everybody else. I'm going to like build my, get my compound and put a fence around it and screw and my private police force. Well, there's some people who are already doing that, but that doesn't work for most people. So we have to decide which way we're going. I think we're at a watershed right now. I think this is just a symptom of these changes going on, and it's all connected with global warming, overpopulation. All this stuff is coming to a head right now. People are saying we have to change because this model is not working.
Right.
So.